Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's SANS webcast. Which SANS pen test course should I take? November 2017 edition. My name is Carol Auth of the SANS Institute, and I will be moderating today's webcast. Today's featured speakers are Ed Skoudis and Larry Pesce, both SANS instructors. If during the webcast you have any questions for our presenters, please enter them into the questions window located on the GoToWebinar interface at any time. Please note that this webcast is being recorded, and a copy of the slides and recording of this webcast will be available for viewing later today and can be found on the SANS registration page. And with that, I'd like to hand the webcast over to Ed.
Hey, thank you, Carol. I do appreciate it. I'd like to thank everybody for joining us here today. We're doing a series of these webcasts called Which SANS Pen Test Course Should I Take? And the reason for this is we have over a dozen different SANS pen test courses, and I get asked this question all the time, and we thought, well, why don't we just go ahead and answer it on a regular basis, talking about some of the new courses that are coming up, but also doing practical demos of like real-world skills that you can learn just in the webcast itself. So even if you don't take the course, you still get some extra skills. So we had done one of these, gosh, it was about a month ago or so with Mark Baggett about the SEC617 course. That's the one on Python for information security professionals, because there's some really new stuff that we put into that course. And then we're thinking about the next one in the series, this one, and there's been a huge update in the SANS wireless pen testing course. That's SANS617, and Larry Pesce was brought on as a co-author of that course now. Josh Wright is also a co-author of the course, and so we reached out to Larry and said, hey, Larry, you want to talk about some 617 and talk about some of the new stuff in there and do some demos? And Larry's like, yeah. So that's what we've got here for you, folks. It's going to last about an hour here. We want it to be interactive. Please ask questions and such. I'm going to talk for about 5 or 8 minutes about how to choose a SANS pen test course, and then we're going to turn it over to Larry, and he's going to present to you some of the cool, hot, new, and exciting 617 material. Larry, you good with that?
Absolutely.
Thank you, buddy. Hey, could you go to the next slide, please?
Most certainly.
Excellent. So choosing a SANS course, I got to tell you, folks, I love taking SANS courses myself. I love to go in and see the instructors, to learn from them, to just experience that whole SANS thing. And it's all based on the SANS promise. I don't know if you've heard about this, but SANS really measures itself by this promise. And the promise is you will be able to apply what you learned at SANS the very next day you get back to the office. And we look not only at every class from that perspective, we look at every lab, we look at every hour of every class, even, frankly, down at the slide level. Does this slide give people stuff that they can use when they get back to the job? Now, there's over 65 SANS courses, and of those 65, over a dozen are pen test courses. And, you know, which one do you choose? Now, the thing of it is, you know, SANS courses are really a great opportunity to learn stuff. And if your boss or your employer or even you yourself are paying for a SANS course, you want to choose right. You want to get a course that will give you skills that will let you do your job better. And if I can, you know, be sort of selfish from your perspective on this, you want to be able to earn more money, right? I mean, there's an investment being made in you to develop your skills by coming to SANS. That's great. SANS Promise is there to say we want to pay back on that investment, right? So you want to spend your money wisely and get a course that will help you achieve your goals. So I've got a few ideas, just a couple, on the next slide that will help you go through that and choose the best course for you. So Larry, if we could go to the next slide, please. I recommend you kind of brainstorm with yourself about this. You know, what's your background? What's your current skill level? Are you somebody brand new to information security? Have you been doing it for a few years? Or maybe you know, you're really, really good at this stuff and you're looking to take your skills to the next level. You see, in my role, I'm the curriculum lead over the SANS Pen Test curriculum. That means it's my job to ensure that we have the classes you need to help you do your job better from a pen testing perspective. So that's now many of the pen test courses are taken by people who are not pen testers. In fact, I find in my own course, I have a course called SANS Security 560, which is on network pen testing and ethical hacking. I always do a survey saying, how many people in this course are pen testers? And I usually get about a third of the people raising their hand. And I say, okay, how many people in this course are cyber defenders who are better trying to understand the attacks so they can defend better against them? And about a third of the people raise their hand there. And then I say, how many people in this class are actually forensics people who want to better understand their evidence, so they're here to learn the attacks better? And about a third of the people raise their hand there. So it's about one-third, one-third, one-third taking pen test courses, because folks understand that offense can inform defense, offense can inform forensics and help you do your job better. So what do you want to do with your job? Do you want to be a pen tester? If so, we've got pen test classes for you. Do you want to be a cyber defense person? If so, we've got great cyber defense classes. Or maybe you have some good background in that already, so you want to learn more about the offensive side to be a better cyber defender. Or maybe it's the same kind of thing for forensics. You could take a great forensics course. SANS has over a dozen of those. Or if you've already done some good forensic stuff and want to learn more on the offense, hey, we're here for you too. But you should also consider what your boss wants you to do, right? Oftentimes, your boss or your organization, your company, your government agency, your military group, they have certain goals for you in your career and certain things that they want you to develop. So take that into account. And then look at the intersection of what you want to do and what your boss wants you to do, and think about the skills that are necessary to achieve that, right? Also, you should consider how important is certification for you. For some people, they really want to make sure that there is a cert associated with the class that they take. That way they can go back and show their boss, yes, I got the certification. I did measurably learn something in this class. I have certain skills that I can now apply, and we've measured and checked that. SANS works with an organization called GIAC, G-I-A-C, to do the certification exams that are associated with these SANS classes. And another thing to keep in mind, while it's important to try to choose the right SANS course for you to achieve your goals and your boss's goals, if you choose the wrong course, it's not the end of the world. SANS is very open. If you get to a SANS event, or you're taking a SANS on-demand or online class, and you get into the class and maybe you've been there a couple hours or maybe even up to a full day, and you realize this is not the right class for me, it's too easy, it's too hard, it's just a topic matter I'm not as interested in as I thought I was, we'll switch it. Seriously. It's best to do this on day one or at the latest day two, because you're going to have to go into another class, but you don't want to miss too much. But seriously, if you're in a class and you decide it's not the right class for you early on in the class, we will switch you to another class that's more appropriate. But ideally, you're going to choose the best thing right out of the gate. So let's move to the next slide, because we have a resource to help you do that. So SANS spent a lot of time and a lot of effort. In fact, this was over a year in the making to put together a new course roadmap. And it's all animated. It's super fancy. It's really quite nifty. You can get it at the URL you see on the screen here, right? https://www.sans.org/roadmap. Easy to type. I hope it's easy to remember. And if you do this, you'll see it's this nice little animated thing, and it flows from the left to the right across the page. The baseline skills are on the left-hand side. You see number one, baseline skills. Then we can get into more focused job roles. And you see we've got the blue for defense, the red for offense, and the black is associated with forensics. Then when you get to step 3 here, these are crucial skills with very specialized roles. And as you click on each one of these things, you'll see that there's little course numbers here. You can click on the course numbers and get a whole lot of detail. So this thing is designed to be animated inside your browser. But if you want like a static copy that's not animated, but you just want to hold the whole thing or print it out or something like that, we do have that available if you go to the URL you see on the lower right-hand side. Most people like interacting with the live one because it lets them kind of explore and fly around the different classes, but if you want the static one, it's on the right. Let's go to the next slide and I'll kind of walk you through this, okay? So we got the baseline skills on the left, and in there, SANS has just 2 classes. 2 classes that we consider, hey, if you're starting out in this space and you want to learn, SEC 401 or SEC 504 are useful courses for you. SEC 401 is Security Essentials. It's a defense-minded perspective of a lot of different information security topics to kind of get you going, Security Essentials. Where SEC 504 is on hacker techniques. I'm the original author of that course, but we've transitioned the authorship over to John Strand. But hacker techniques and incident response, that's what 504 is all about. So that's sort of the offensive view of security, but it's written from the perspective of offense informs defense. So that's what we've got on our baseline skills on the left, just 2 courses. Now this is going to expand, though, into over 50 courses, right? We then get into the focused job roles. You see here, if you hover over the section, penetration testing, so maybe you've taken 504 as your start, you want to now get more into penetration testing. When you hover over that, you'll see it says, unlike other training that claims to teach ethical hacking, SANS courses are uniquely designed and taught to provide that understanding and skills to provide business value, right? And if you click on the little pluses here, it expands that out and you can see more and more courses. So let's go to the next slide. So here, once I've expanded all this out, you'll see in the middle, right, that sort of penetration testing baseline part 2, we've got SANS Security 560, which is network pen testing, and SANS Security 542, which is web app pen testing. Now, I'm the author of the SEC 560 course. We've got some great authors of the 542 course as well. So that's kind of building on your second skill. If you've taken 504 and want to see where you go next, do 560 or 542 or both. And then if you want to get even more detailed, or maybe you already come to the table with a whole bunch of skills, you might want to go into something like SANS Security 660, which is advanced pen testing, or 642, which is advanced web app pen testing, and more. And there's other courses in here, including hands-on cyber range courses like SANS Security 561 or SANS Security 573. You click on any one of these, and it gives you all the detail for the course. You see? Let's go on to the next slide. Cool. I'm sorry, guys. I really do like this roadmap because it organizes things. You know, before we had this roadmap, yeah, we kind of would talk about the different courses and such, but it got kind of confusing. The roadmap really streamlines this analysis for you to figure out what courses you're going to take. And you see, once you hover over, like, say, SEC 573, it'll say, oh, SEC 573, that's automating information security with Python. And then you've got all these details about the course. You click on that, it takes you right to the whole detailed syllabus. And we're working hard to keep those course syllabuses reflective of all the new course changes. I had mentioned that we had done a huge change in SANS Security 573 just over the last 12 months, and that course is selling really well. It's been the 4th or 5th best-selling SANS course of the 56 courses, 4th or 5th best-selling at our national events for the last year because of all these great changes we made. And then we've got some new stuff in 617. Josh Wright and Larry Pesce have been working really hard on coming up with great new material for this 617 course, which is on penetration testing associated with a wireless infrastructure. They got such great new stuff. I'm really happy to say it's selling really well too. We've got an event coming up next week. It's called the SANS Pen Test Hackfest. It's going to be down in Bethesda, Maryland, Washington, D.C. area. It is the 2nd best-selling course there. SANS Security 617 is great stuff. And Larry, you're going to share some of that with us, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, so let me turn things over to Larry. Larry, you can bump over to your next slide. And guys, we would love to get questions from you. So please ask me questions that you have. We're going to kind of aggregate those questions, and then we'll have a Q&A section at the end where I will ask your amazing questions of Larry. Larry's going to do a little presentation here and a little demo. Remember the SANS promise. And Larry's going to fulfill that SANS promise, right, Larry? You're going to give us some stuff that we can use. Awesome.
You bet.
So you bet. Take it away, sir. Take it away.
And even better, Ed, I'm going to give you some stuff that this is actually even sort of a bonus in conjunction with the class, because one of the tools that I'm going to talk about is a tool that I discovered, Josh and I discovered actually, after the courseware was already submitted, so it's going to be in one of the next revisions. So, like, this is even more bonus stuff.
Larry, I'm sure you hear this a lot. I'm sure you hear this, but you are a beautiful man. You really are.
Thank you, Ed. You are too.
Oh, shucks, buddy.
Oh, shucks. Oh, shucks. But speaking of beautiful, if I do say so myself, Josh and I spent the last year working on SEC617, and we were very much of the opinion that the class needed to evolve just like our environments have evolved for wireless technologies. It's become so much more than just our Wi-Fi based technologies in both our enterprise and our home environments. We're seeing all sorts of other new stuff, as evident by some of Ed's presentations recently on building his home automation stuff, which I'm really excited to spend some time with and talk with about Ed. We're now having Zigbee and Z-Wave and digital enhanced cordless telephone and a plethora of well-defined wireless protocols in our environments. And many of these things folks are not looking at from a security perspective. They show up in their environment and they don't think too much about it, because it's the nifty new wowie features that, hey, well, we can make our shades go up and down. Well, that's great. You can make your shades go up and down, but what is the rest of that connected to, and does this introduce any sort of risk to our organization? Most people aren't looking at these other these protocols outside of Wi-Fi to see if they introduce any risk into their environment. As a result, not only has our environment changed for the advent of new wireless technologies, 617 needs to keep up with that as well. So the newer course material has evolved to address all of these new threats that folks really need to consider as a potential risk to their environment. And while the primary focus is still on Wi-Fi, because it is in fact very important to secure, as we've seen just recently with some of the new attacks, specifically crack that we just did a webcast on a little less than a month ago about some of these new wireless attacks, new Wi-Fi based attacks. They're still salient, they're still out there, and it is very much still an attack vector for folks to get into networks from both an attacker's perspective and a pen tester's perspective. But there's still a lot of other new stuff that we need to think about, and we've included a great number of these in 617. So as the environment has evolved, our instruction has evolved. Why? Because in order to be a really good wireless security analyst, we need to evolve as well. And we need to be introduced to so many more things than just Wi-Fi. And in the last course that I taught of 617 with a new update, one of my students wrote back to me afterwards and said, "Larry, I had no idea about a couple of these protocols, and my eyes have been opened, and oh my gosh, we really need to consider what this means to our organization. In fact, do we even have any of this in our organization?" And in our case, from doing pen test work daily, there are many cases that it's in an environment and folks don't really realize that it's there. So, all right. So what's new in the recent update to 617? It's largely a 60% update. Some of the content from previous versions are still there because it's still salient. It is very much things that we need to be thinking about day to day, and even some of those have been updated with some more modern tools for the evolution of those tools as they've come along naturally. And Josh and I spent a year updating the course, and it was very much a labor of love, and we spent many waking and sometimes even sleeping hours working on it. And we're really happy with the end results. Unfortunately, in order to give you guys new material, we only have 6 days for a course. But ultimately, it ends up being okay because we take a much sharper, more succinct approach to address issues and things that we want to consider from both a risk and an attack perspective for both Wi-Fi and classic Bluetooth. To give you guys the stuff that you really need, distill that down into the stuff that you can take back to the office and be able to go do what you need to do and do all of these other things as well. And for some of those new things that we've done, we've included a ton of information on Bluetooth Low Energy, which is one of the new Bluetooth standards and is not going anywhere anytime soon, and seen huge upticks with a lot of Internet of Things type of devices. We've also added a very short section on Z-Wave within the Zigbee sort of overview. While Z-Wave's a little bit different than Zigbee, many of the attack tools are the same and introduce much of the same risk to some of the Zigbee stuff, and may also be even a little bit more scary. We also do some discussion an entire day on RFID and the various near-field communications NFC type of technologies, whether it be for asset tracking, for monitoring and tracking for various people and or devices, as well as a lot of access control type systems. And a few other fun applications as well when we potentially start talking about product development that include these types of things. And the other one that's really big is that we're doing now an introduction to software-defined radio as well, with some actual hands-on types of stuff. You guys are going to be getting, as part of the class, updated SWAT kits. Those are the kits that you get as part of the course material to give you tools that you can take back into your environment and deploy the day you get back and see some value out of things that you can observe. So with that SWAT kit, wireless adapters, Bluetooth adapters, really great ones, software-defined radio, all sorts of fun stuff there. We've built a bunch of labs around those tools and the course material to give you hands-on with the new tools and the new hardware, and give you the ability to start building the muscle memory of some of the tools and some of the process and the procedure for dealing with all of these new technologies and the old ones for Wi-Fi 2 with some of the new base attacks. So lots of new stuff, and I'm really excited about some of this new stuff. Specifically for me, the software-defined radio stuff was a ton of fun to put together, and I learned so much going through the material that Josh wrote on NFC that I had played with NFC, and I've used NFC, a lot on pen test type activities. And I even learned a ton from reviewing some of Josh's material there as well. So not only are we the Hair Club president, we're also the clients. So the one thing that's been very interesting for me is that we were pretty static on the number of folks that came to do 617. And that it was very much my opinion that I think many folks thought that they had a really good handle on their Wi-Fi security, when in many cases, based on what I saw for pen tests, that they had a decent handle, but not one that was good enough. And we've changed that to get folks to really understand that maybe they need to do a little bit more. And by adding all of the new technologies, we're now starting to see some increased enrollment. So lots of folks are taking some of this new stuff seriously, apparently. And in fact, in just next week, Ed and I will be at the SANS Pentest Hackfest. And it is the second highest enrolled class at Hackfest, second only to Ed's 560 course, which for me is just amazing. Like, I didn't think people would come. It reminds me very much of me doing this podcast with my good friend Paul for all these years. I mean, we're going to record this podcast, and who's going to come listen? Well, apparently lots of people come listen because people really like what we have to say. So let's talk a little bit more about what goes into wireless pen testing and ethical hacking course, written both by Josh and myself. And if you're at any point want to ask other questions outside of this venue, Josh and I, you can find us on Twitter. We're very approachable, so don't hesitate to ask. And with the wireless ethical penetration testing and hacking course, we also do have the GAWN certificate. And no, it's not GAWN, G-O-N-E, it's the G-A-W-N, the GIAC Auditing Wireless Networks class, certificate rather. So lots of fun to be had there, and challenge coins. All right. So who should attend 617? And I have some very sort of opinionated types of things about this. Me, when we go in to do lots of pen test work for my day job at InGuardians, I think a lot of the folks that are responsible for managing wireless security in their environments probably should come take this class, because many of the times the things that we're talking about in class are the things that these people could use to better improve the security of their wireless networks, their wireless clients, and even thinking about all of these other wireless technologies. There are a number of times that we've gone into an organization and said, hey guys, we've got an extra spare hour. We'd love to, hang around and chat, but we'd love to give some extra value add. Would you mind if we fired up a Zigbee sniffer? And the answer is, sure, why not? I mean, we're not going to put any of this in a report, but what can you tell us? And they said, well, we don't have any Zigbee stuff in our environment, and sure enough, they do. So having that overall exposure to a lot more wireless technologies in your environment is good. So not only is it good for defense from helping understand risk and help prevent some of these issues that come up in the corporate environment, it's also great for some pen testers of the same ilk, that having an understanding of more information about more than just Wi-Fi and the latest and greatest Wi-Fi attacks helps them with identifying risk to their customers as well. Okay. So if you've ever asked yourself, I wish I could look at the overall threat to my organization with all of the RF-based technologies that are in my environment, I think SANS617 is great for you. And on the converse, from the attack and penetration testing side, if you've ever asked yourself, I wish I could help my clients understand the threat of RF-based technologies to their business, I also think this is a great choice for you to consider as a course, because we do hit on all the things that I think folks are missing, both from the defense side and the attack side. Some other things to think about, a lot of the newer technologies that we've added to the course are very much those that have been entrenched in Internet of Things, and probably won't be going away because Internet of Things have taken off. And it's also protocols that we're seeing as very much a part of our lives nowadays. And part of that is due to the explosion of the Internet of Things. Bluetooth Low Energy, Zigbee, Z-Wave are ones that come to mind. And then we have this whole host of unknown, undocumented, or somewhat documented, more proprietary protocols that we discover with some software-defined radio stuff. If you've ever asked yourself, hey, I'd really like to understand more about how IoT works and communicates wirelessly, I think this is also a great course for you to consider. And even those in some product development for IoT or otherwise that may be considering using Wi-Fi, Zigbee, Z-Wave, Bluetooth, or some other proprietary protocol to get you some background and some understanding about the types of attacks that happen and how you can potentially defend against them. Some other things to think about if you're in a corporate environment and you are doing wireless, or you're looking to do new wireless. If you're looking to do that and your organization has a commitment to do this securely and with an ever-evolving mobile workforce, I also think this is a great opportunity for you to enhance your skill set to bring more value to your organization and more security. Okay, so what's the whole layout of this course looks like? Day one on the Wi-Fi side is very much foundational for a good portion of the day. We talk about data collection and analysis, meaning what do we do when we show up and we want to do this assessment, either pen test wise or learn about the environment too, so that we can understand how to defend it and what some of the attacks that are possible. From the foundational side, we need to get access to traffic. So we need to figure out how to do some sniffing and then do some analysis of what we see and what the attacker sees. We also then start looking at some basic type of attacks with some rogue access points and how we can discover those and how we can start putting some of that traffic together, as well as some additional techniques against attacking clients who may already be connected to one of your legitimate wireless networks. And this is one of those sections that Josh wrote, which he entitled Bridging the Air Gap, in which you attack a client which is connected to a wireless network, or you attack a client that could connect to a wireless network but isn't currently. And I thought about this the first time Josh proposed this to me and then showed me some material, and I said, Josh, when am I ever going to use this? And about 2 weeks later, I got in one of those situations where I had access to a machine that was inside of a corporate network, wired, but had a wireless adapter enabled. And I got so much further into that wireless network as an attacker because I used the techniques that I learned in Bridging the Air Gap. It was literally one of those things that I took back to my job 2 weeks later. Maybe not the next day, but it was really darn close.
SANS promise, yay!
Yay! And it wasn't even from a student's perspective, it was me as an instructor. It was one of the other, the authors giving me ideas about, well, I had never thought about that before. And that was great. And I think that's how Josh and I work really well together, is that we very much have that relationship of, inspiring each other to do better. Nice. Yes. All right. So after some of the foundational stuff, we move on to day two with some attack and exploitation techniques. We talk about hotspot networks, open wireless networks, and their associated clients, and how we can attack and affect traffic based on those networks, which we've seen a huge proliferation on. We also talk about hacking web. Yes, still. We very much take a very succinct approach to attacking web. We understand how web is broken. We take a little bit to understand how that works, largely because it is very much the basis for a bunch of the other Wi-Fi security protocols, encryption, and encryption methodologies. That web is very much the basis, and understanding the concept that goes into web gives us a really great methodology for being able to look at some of the other stuff, including those in other technologies such as Zigbee, Z-Wave, digital enhanced cordless telephone, on and on and on and on. So understanding web gives us very much a volume of knowledge to be able to understand lots of other wireless security issues. Some other things that we look at are denial of service attacks, and not just the attacks about taking out a network and leaving them down. It's also how we can use denial of service to affect other security issues, and multiple ways in which we can do that. And finally, on day 2, we talk about some really complex stuff about doing fuzzing, sending malformed inputs to various wireless devices and seeing how they react. So we go from simple to pretty complex within 2 days, and then it only goes from there. It goes even better from there. On day 3, we move from, we do some more Wi-Fi with WPA, WPA2 pre-shared key, and some enterprise-based attacks, both against networks and clients. And then we move into some of the non-traditional wireless things that we find in folks' networks all the time. We talk about digital enhanced cordless telephony, or DECT, which is very much a telephony type of network. It's also been here in the U.S. It's also been used for data a lot in Europe. However, it has its issues, and I think about this from a call center or your phone in your office perspective. If you have a wireless headset in your office, and think about the things that you talk about on said wireless headset. What version of RF protocol are they using on that headset? My opinion is it's likely one of two. It's either Bluetooth or it's DECT. And typically I find that the DECT ones are cheaper. So who wins the lowest bid? DECT often. So it may be very much a risk in your environment. Some other ones, Zigbee is also lots of fun to interact with in that Zigbee is still a little bit of the Wild West, and is a protocol that has some very interesting design challenges and design failures, and is one that continues to evolve as time goes on. And to the point that everything with Zigbee evolves so much is that Zigbee, in my opinion, on this slide is capitalized properly with a capital Z and a capital B. And within the last couple of weeks, we've discovered that Zigbee Alliance, the folks that are responsible for Zigbee, now also accept Zigbee with a lowercase b as an appropriate spelling, which really threw me for a loop and I think is incredibly wrong. So not only does the protocol change, but the way in which we use it and the way we observe it is also different. On day 4, we spend half a day looking at Bluetooth in its entirety. We spend some time looking at Bluetooth Classic, and then we do a lot of fun Bluetooth low energy stuff. And it's one of those things now that just about everything you're finding has something that's Bluetooth low energy, and Bluetooth low energy is showing up in everything. I will venture to guess that Ed will attest to that based on what I know about a lot of things that he does in his totally awesome automated home office.
Oh yeah, it's the proliferation of BLE stuff now, and when I just start exploring what's around me in Bluetooth, I'm always surprised that I didn't know that thing had a Bluetooth BLE interface. I just didn't even know, right?
Yeah, exactly. And very much. I was doing some Bluetooth low energy experimentation in a place that I won't mention, but some very interesting things showed up where I wouldn't have expected Bluetooth low energy to be present, and for types of services that I wouldn't have been expecting it to be there for. I'll share that as a private story for folks in an undisclosed location. So lots of fun Bluetooth low energy stuff, as well as very much some introduction into software-defined radio to get your feet wet with what is ultimately something that we could probably very easily turn into a 6-day or 12-day class for software-defined radio on its own, because it is massively complex. But getting your feet wet and getting the understanding about how some of these protocols that we're looking at with software-defined radio are designed goes miles or kilometers, depending on your location on the planet, to understanding the overall threat to some of these things that we can find with software-defined radio. On day 5, it is entirely devoted to proximity-based failures and attacks with both RFID smart card and NFC-based stuff. We do like half a day on near-field communications of all sorts of varieties, and then half a day divided so a little bit between both the low-frequency and the high-frequency attacks for the various RFID and smart card technologies, and talking about how they're used for access control and device tracking and all sorts of fun stuff, and some things that we can do with those as well. And I think one of the things that Josh and I are probably most proud of is finally day 6 of 617 has moved into a full, honest to goodness, capture the flag scenario that encompasses all of the stuff that we've talked about within the course, whether it be Zigbee or software-defined radio, and you get to have more hands-on and start to figuring out some of the things that you might use back in your day job with all of the tools that we've given you over the last 5 days. And Josh mentioned to me right before we debuted the update in Las Vegas this year, he said that to me that it was one of the most complex, most robust CTF challenges that he's had the pleasure to work on. And that's kind of humbling, because it's quite amazing and it's unbelievably fun, and we had so much fun putting it together to be able to address all of the technologies that we cover in the course. Lots of fun. All right, so at the end, day 6 for the CTF, we used to have just a small CTF for coins, in that the way the course used to run on day 2 as an optional after-class exercise, we do the, quote, rogue access point hunt, where the instructor would take 3 access points and hide them in the facility, and you'd have to go track them down. And the first 3 people that tracked them down and appropriately answered some questions would win challenge coins. Now, that is no longer an optional, well, it could be optional, but there are 3 access points that get hidden as merely 3 questions in the CTF, comprised of many questions. So now it is an in-class activity on day 6 for the CTF, and is only one small portion of the CTF. So lots more to it now. All right, so with that SANS promise, as Ed has mentioned a couple of times already, we wanted to give you guys something out of this webcast that we sort of go over in 617, and as I mentioned at the beginning of the class, that we maybe are going to go up a little bit above and beyond what's actually in the class now, to talk about some of these new tools. One of them is that I want to talk about today was Bluetooth Low Energy, largely because the use of Bluetooth Low Energy has exploded in all sorts of crazy devices with the advent of IoT. And it all depends on how you define IoT, that now everything is connected somewhere, and I argue that's what IoT is. Excuse me. And some of you may have heard the term Bluetooth Low Energy. Bluetooth Low Energy has a bunch of different names depending on where you're reading it, you name it. It's also known as BLE or BTLE, so Bluetooth Low Energy or Bluetooth Low Energy. It's also known as Bluetooth Smart or Bluetooth 4.x. It's Bluetooth 4.0 and 4.1. There's also now Bluetooth 5.0, which is very much Bluetooth Low Energy like, with some small differences, mostly on distance and battery life, but very similar type of application. So understanding a lot about Bluetooth 4, Bluetooth Low Energy, gives you a lot of background into Bluetooth 5 already. With Bluetooth Low Energy, the intent was to be able to deploy this to lots of smaller devices. And as a result, the Bluetooth Special Interest Group decided that they needed to have a simplified Bluetooth stack to make it easier and smaller to implement in devices to make it easier to use, as well as those with a smaller operating footprint. Unfortunately, with that, they effectively simplified the Bluetooth stack and also simplified the security features as well. And in many cases, we're finding that that the security is either optional or poor by the way it was designed by the special interest group, or they were just poor implementations by those that are actually putting it on their devices. The big one is, how do we know if we support Bluetooth low energy? Well, we need to do some scanning and enumeration and then start interacting with the various Bluetooth low energy devices to determine what they can do. And I had thought about this, and Josh and I were discussing about what to present on this webcast, and we were talking, and Josh, this is just kind of like looking at a traditional wired-based IP network, but with a slightly different shift to it. You need to do some scanning, you need to do some enumeration, you need to do some interaction with these devices. And very much Bluetooth low energy tools fall down that similar type of capabilities and those similar types of needs. So doing that is very similar to something like Endmap. So I suspect many of us have used Endmap in a traditional network audit, pen test, discovery type of capability. And I think about this from Endmap from a couple of different ways in which I can use it. One, I can just use it to discover what's there on my network by doing a ping sweep. Use Endmap to do a ping sweep, and maybe we get back all the hosts through there. What's on my network? Fairly similar to what we'd find with, hey, what's in my environment for Bluetooth? We wouldn't use Endmap for that, and we'll talk about that in the next slide, some tools we'll use for that. Some other one is, well, great, there's devices out there, but what do they do? What type of services do they offer? Well, let's do a SIN scan with version detection and operating system detection. Let's get some more information about what type of capabilities they have, what ports are open, what type of feature set do they have, what type of software are they running, and very much doing more enumeration on a wired or an IP network or a wireless network, Wi-Fi network, that we would do with something like Bluetooth Low Energy. And then finally, I'd consider using some NSE scripts to get more information and do additional interaction with some of my discovered hosts with Endmap by using some of these NSE scripts, by actually sending packets to the device to interact with them to potentially make them do something and then find out what that end result was. And we can also do that with some Bluetooth type tools. Very similar sort of methodologies for discovery. Hey, what do they do? And then, great, what do they do? What are the capabilities of these things, and what potential issues do we have? All right, so to give you guys something that you can bring back home. For some initial stuff, we're going to start with some enumeration and some initial interaction with some Bluetooth low energy devices. And I'm actually going to demo these for you. We're going to make sure that Bluetooth low energy support is turned on our Bluetooth adapter. We're then going to initiate a scan, what devices are out there, and then start doing some of that basic enumeration. Now, after the basic enumeration is done, we want to potentially interact with them to figure out some of the features and maybe some of the failures like we do with an NSE script. The problem is with using some of the manual tools like GAT tool in this case, it is onerous, and discovering all of the services and how we can interact with them is incredibly tedious. But we're going to show you some other ways that we can do that. So let's do that. All right, so the first one, hopefully you guys can all see my Kali install. This is very much the Kali installation that we use in class, custom Kali install for all of our tools. I'm going to turn Bluetooth management. I swear I can type. I will say that we were talking in the pre-show banter about doing some karate and so forth. And about a month ago, I got kicked in the hand and actually nearly broke one of my fingers, and we'll take that offline, but I'm wearing a finger splint, so it's a little bit harder to type, but we're going to stick through this. So we're going to use our Bluetooth management application to turn on low energy support. So now we have Bluetooth low energy support on. If we turn that off, it no longer says LE down at the end here, but we want it to be on. So we're going to turn that on. So now we've got the LE feature set enabled, and we're going to use HCI tool and initiate a scan, but it's going to be the low energy scan. Great, so it shows a bunch of devices, and then I have this new little Bluetooth device that I'm going to turn on. It's going to show up. All right, well, that's not terribly easy to use. So we've got a couple of devices. There's this one that shows it unknown, and then a further query, it shows that it's this light show strings. Yeah, I have a Bluetooth low energy enabled set of Christmas lights in my office, so that could be fun. But the one I'm interested in is the SEC617 TI sensor tag. Now, this stuff scrolls by real fast, so why don't we send this to some output, and we'll let it run for a little bit here, using some command line kung fu, and I'm actually embarrassed that I'm doing this with Ed on the webcast because I know he can do this so much better.
Oh, I don't know about that. I am right now, as you're going through this, I'm typing these commands into my NUC here and doing the same thing you're doing. So this is fun.
Excellent. Excellent. Yep. So we sent a bunch of stuff to out.txt. We've got a bunch of stuff in out.txt. Now let's use some command line kung fu and sort them and send those to unique and count the unique devices. Okay. So we've got 50 from the one known as the CC617 sensor tag, same MAC address with another 64. And we've got about an 11 from some unknown device. I have no idea. My daughter's school bus literally just drove by the front of the house, and we might have picked some up from somebody on the bus. From there, and then 177 or so for the light shown strings in this unknown device with the same MAC address. Interesting stuff. So now we know some devices in our environment that are available and have some high packet count, the light show strings, and the CC617 sensor tag. Well, great. Let's go see if we can start doing some interaction with this one. So we'll do GAT tool. We're going to do a low energy connection. We're going to do the connection type using the public address. We can also use a random address, and it will depend on some of the security that they've implemented with some of the devices as to which we can connect to. In this case, I've tested it prior. We're going to use the public. If the connection fails, I'll go back to random, but I know public will work in this case. I'm going to connect to the address here. So I'm just going to copy and paste it. Maybe. Let's try this again. Copy. Paste. There we go. And I'm going to ask it about the primary services. We can also interact with this directly, but for expediency, we'll just ask it about a bunch of services. We'll make it connect and ask it about a bunch of stuff. May take a little bit of a second here, and in fact, my device may have actually turned off between now and then. So I'm venturing to guess it's going to time out. Yep, oh, there we go. All right, so it went and connected to the device over low energy using the public address on our Kali install, connected to our remote device for our TI sensor tag, and asked it, what are your primary services? And this is great, we've got a bunch of primary services, but what in the heck does this mean? And the sad part is I have no idea, but there's a table. And now I can go manually enumerate all of these things in the table manually. That's no fun. It's really no fun. So one of the tools that we discovered just recently was a tool called Bleh. Yeah, Bleh. B-L-E-A-H, Bleh. And great tool written by Evil Socket. Clear. We'll do BLEAH-T0, and -T tells it to scan, and 0, no timeout, just let it run until we tell it to stop. All right, so now it starts scanning, and it finds a bunch of devices. And if you want my opinion, this is a heck of a lot nicer to read. It tells us more features about some of the devices, specifically whether or not we can connect to some of these devices. Allows connection, yes. Tells us about what's supported, talks about some names if it's available. And the one that I'm interested in, again, is back to this Texas Instruments CC617 sensor tag, which is connectable. Oh, well, that's great. So we did the scan. We also did the scan with HCI scanning as well, and we connected to it with GAT tool. Well, we can also use BLEA to do some enumeration. So in this case, we're going to do B of the address, and we're going to enumerate that TI sensor tag, and we're going to give it the -E flag for enumerate just that one device. It goes and scans and see if it can find the device again. It will then attempt to connect to it. Oh, it didn't like it that time. All right, let's turn the device off. We'll turn it back on. And we'll run it again. Hopefully I typed the address correctly, because that's important. You know, I sacrificed a bunch of chickens to the demo god, and for whatever reason, it's no longer working. Let's do another scan. All right. Here's our address. Nope, that's the light show strings. This is the address. We'll copy this just to be sure. Copy. We'll see. I want to connect to that address that we just copied, and I want to do enumeration. There we go. I typed something wrong apparently. So it found that it was there. It connects to it, and then it starts to do that enumeration. It asks for the primary services, and then it digs into each one of those primary services to give us each one of the characteristics on each one of those services. And we get a lot more information. In this case, we get some device name. It's the sensor tag 2.0. It doesn't tell us what the appearance looks like. Some names, some versions, some PC board versions. All of these as part of the Bluetooth low energy spec. And instead of having to figure out what these unique identifiers are and map those to the official documentation, it does it for us. Manufacturer name string is default known, well documented. There's also a bunch that are undocumented that are allowed to be used for each individual device per their documentation. So they're user-defined or software-defined folks. And this one becomes interesting because now we've got a whole bunch of capabilities for each one of these IDs. So our UUID and our individual characteristic field. So within a group, we've got a bunch. So within the group between 22 and 29, we've got a bunch of features here. We've got a read that when it's updated, we'll push and do a push notification. We've got two values that are both read and write. And for me, figuring out where these writes are interesting are good, because we can potentially affect the operation of a device. We can potentially turn things on or off. We can write a value to change something on the device so that data is interpreted differently. For example, this TI sensor tag has the ability to switch between centigrade and Fahrenheit reading. And if you're expecting it to be in Fahrenheit and it switches to centigrade and the math is different on whatever application you're using this in, maybe you're triggering something that is completely different. So one of the things that I want to do is that we can now also use BLEA-H, and I just did a Massachusetts thing. instead of typing clear, I typed clear with an H. So if we use BLEAH for that same address, but instead of enumerating, we've also found some values. And one of those values we found was handle 0x29, which was a single byte value set to 0. And by looking at the documentation, this is the on-off switch for the temperature sensor. It was currently set to off, but let's send it to some new data. And I've been experimenting with this and necessarily haven't gotten this to work right. I think I'm got 2 different sets of documentation because they have 2 different versions of these. But we can use BLEAH to start writing to the devices once we've done some enumeration. Okay, so let's
Larry, you got about 5 more minutes.
Yep.
Okay, just wanted FYI.
Yep, thanks, sir. All right. Hey, we wrote to it. And what happened? Well, I don't know. It's going to require some additional analysis. But the fact that we've been able to discover, enumerate, figure out what capabilities it has, and where we can start interacting with the device to potentially change something on the device that has some perceived output with just a couple of tools is incredibly amazing. And in fact, as you've seen, how many times have I typed in a PIN or a password to connect to this device to change some physical characteristic of the device? 0. Really poor security implementation, and many BLE devices we're finding are very similar to that. So with that, let's go. And we did our manual enumeration demo, and I sort of automatically jumped into the automation portion with Blair. I really don't know how to pronounce that, but some great output, much better formatted, and much easier for me to read and start getting some understanding as to where I need to interact with this device. So with that, Ed, let's go some questions and answers.
That was fantastic, Larry. I really appreciate that. You know, I started working with Bluetooth low energy in my own office about 6 months ago in a very serious way. And what you just presented there, I didn't figure it out as well as you just explained it. And I spent hours and hours and hours going through HCI tool and all the different things. So that was really tremendously helpful, very useful. We did get some questions here that I would like to address. Let's see. Okay, here's one. If you attend the 617 course, does it include a software-defined radio or BLE equipment, Larry?
Yes, so we do have the Pirani Sena UD100, which is in my opinion, one of the best Bluetooth low-energy adapters on the market. In fact, it was the one that I was using for the demo. Super long-range removable antenna and supports up to Bluetooth 4, and I think it's software upgradable to 5 as well. So great stuff. We do also get you a software-defined radio. Granted, it is not one that is a super high-end, top-of-the-line one, but it is one very much that you can start putting some hands on. We talk about doing Wi-Fi. Day one, it is sit and listen. And in very much the software-defined radio that you're doing gives you the opportunity to sit and listen, and you learn so much by doing that, learning how protocols are constructed and so forth. So yes, you are getting the RTL-STR, and one of the really nice ones with the aluminum heat sinks and all that type of stuff and all the appropriate antennas. So yes, you get a software-defined radio and you get some Bluetooth gear.
That's great. In fact, the kit that you get with the 617 course is by far the most complicated, and I might add the most expensive kit that we offer for any class. What else is in that kit? There's all kinds of things you guys have put in there, right?
Yeah. So the wireless adapter, arguably one of the best that we've found that works. Bluetooth low energy. Software-defined radio, an NFC reader and writer, some sample cards to go with the NFC reader and writer. I'm trying to remember what else.
That's near-field communication, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So the ability for us to start interacting with hotel room and badges and such for various facilities. Yep, and there's a few USB thumb drive with tools and virtual machines, and we're looking to add a few other things as time goes on as well.
It's pretty amazing. It is a great kit. Is there a name for the kit for 617?
It's the SWAT kit, the SWAT, and I can't remember what it actually stands for.
Super Wireless Analysis Tool. I don't know. I just made that up.
Sounds good. I like it.
Got another question for you.
Sure.
So does Larry still have his RFID implant?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I do, and I totally freaked out the radiologists just a week ago when I went and had my hand X-rayed from karate accident because they were wondering what in the heck that thing was, and that doesn't look right. So yes, it's still there.
Well, interesting, very interesting. There's one final question here, and I will, maybe we'll have you give your ideas on it first, and then I'll do my ideas on it, because the question is this. Well, I'll let you choose. You can either go first or second. I'll give you the question now. Would it be best to take 560 before I take 617? Oh, my office is chiming. It does that at the top of the hour. So you want to do this, Larry? I'll go on mute for while this thing chimes. And
sounds good.
560 before 617? Yes, no? What do you think?
Yes. Yep. So if it were me, I would very much love you to come to 617 first, but I couldn't in good conscience make that happen for you. I think if you are starting down that pen test route, that I would very much recommend that you take 560 first, because if I think about logically how I'm going to go do a pen test, getting in may be wireless and maybe the initial access vector, but then what the heck do I do when I get there? And that is very much the subject of 560 and being able to articulate all of that risk once you're in. And I think 560 is an excellent complement to 617, but I would recommend doing 560 first.
I appreciate that, Larry. Thank you. That's very insightful. I would say, though, I mean, while I agree, but if somebody has a big project coming up saying you have to assess our wireless next month or something like that,
sure,
you could go to 617. It's going to be pretty intense for you if you haven't taken another, 560 or 504 oriented course. But if you have that need, 617 is designed internally to spin you up quickly to do that. So there's no wrong way to approach it. You could do 617 first and come back for 560 some other time. If you have that more urgent need, or maybe you're just particularly interested in the wireless thing. I find it utterly fascinating. So you got some options there, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah. I hate to say it, there's no right answer to that, but if it was me and thinking about my day-to-day activities, I'd take 560 first, and then build on 560 with that expertise of, hey, now that I'm in, what do I do? Well, now I need to go back. But having that first, in my opinion, would make you a better all-around pen tester or person in your organization to more accurately articulate your risk.
That's good. Well, before we turn this back over to Carol and close this out, there are a couple things I want to talk to folks about, just very briefly. Larry, thank you, dude. That was wonderful. I learned that bleh, however you say it, tool. I didn't know that existed. That's cool. I've been messing around with GAT tool and such, but its output is hard to parse and use. So I like this a lot. So you helped me. Thank you. So next week, Larry and I are going to both be at this thing we call the Pen Test Hack Fest, and it's a 2-day summit followed by 6 days of course stuff, and we got all kinds of great stuff there. There's 3 nights of Net Wars. We're going to be doing Cyber City, all kinds of things. And now I imagine a lot of people listening to us right now are not going to be able to show up next week because, well, it's next week. But we do a similar kind of thing in Austin in the spring. So Austin, Texas, March 19th through 24th, 2018. We call it Pen Test Austin. Now, it doesn't have the 2-day summit piece. It's 6 days of classes, but we include lots and lots of Net Wars. So you get to do a lot of hands-on stuff in the evening. Net Wars is big, competition fun. It's really, really cool. We do 1 night of Cyber City, so you get to protect a physical miniature city from terrorist attack. And we do a thing called Coinapalooza, where you can earn SANS Pen Test Challenge coins for classes that you've already taken or classes that you're currently taking. It's a really neat event. I hope people can come to it. Go to sans.org/pentest2018, 2018. It'll be next March. That's what, 5 months from now? Time flies, I'm telling you. So I wanted to make sure everybody knew about that. Larry, I guess I'm...
Yep, 617, my understanding, will also be at Pen Test Austin. I believe I'm on the schedule to teach it there. And I think Jason, and in Austin, and I think Jason would very much like us to say that I believe that it is now no longer 8 courses. It's expanded to 12 courses. 12 courses. And Austin is wonderful. The food is great. The people are nice. You got to come. Please do join us. Thank you, Larry. You're right. It is up to 12 courses that SANS is offering there now. Yeah, and, figured Jason would appreciate that. He works in marketing.
He does. That's for sure. So Larry, thank you so much for that. Really do appreciate it. Carol, can we turn this back over to you to close us out?
Yep, sounds good. Thank you so much, Ed and Larry, for your great presentation, which helps bring this content to the SANS community. To our audience, we greatly appreciate you listening in. For a schedule of all upcoming and archived SANS webcasts, including this one, please visit sans.org/webcasts. Until next time, take care, and we hope to have you back again for the next SANS webcast.